Watch One Piece, bro, it gets better after Marineford is a statement or a joke that everyone repeats as soon as they hear the words One Piece. It's been repeated so often that some people genuinely believe it to be true. They see an animation upgrade, character redesigns and booba side boost and think, yeah, it makes sense, it does get better. I myself was so hooked by that promise that I watched 500 episodes within one freaking month. Yeah, back when I had so much free time. So we did watch and got to the Marineford arc, and the least that I could say is that it was amazing from the beginning to its shocking end, and convinced me that I wasn't tricked into watching all those episodes for nothing. Shortly after that arc, the animation had a major upgrade, the Straw Hats had an emotional reunion, and I couldn't wait to see more. Except, after the Shabondi arc came the Fisherman Island arc. The Straw Hats sank 10 kilometers deep, and so did my excitement. I don't know about you guys, but I found it pretty disappointing, because I expected a lot. I was promised of a One Piece that is better than what I have already watched, and the next arc, Punk Hazard, didn't fulfill that promise either. Now, I'm not saying that they were necessarily bad, just not as good as I hoped they would be. Dressrosa looked promising, but it was too damn long to maintain my interest, especially since I had to wait an entire week, watching it week by week, and without knowing it, I stopped watching the show altogether. I didn't really know why at the time, it's just that my attention was shifting to something else. But now that I recollect, I realized that One Piece does not get better after Marineford. It was better before. And it sounds a little bit weird to say that, because right now Luffy is fighting stronger opponents, he's partaking in major wars, and is finally getting close to obtaining the One Piece. So I wanted to know why I felt that way. So I analyzed pre and post time skip One Piece, and here's what I found out. So many elements remain the same between the pre and post time skip. The comedy is still there, the writing is still solid, the animation got better. But as the series progressed, and specifically after the New World, it lost a lot of crucial elements. The first thing that I noticed is that pre-time skip antagonists had a much better hit on me, especially Crocodile, Rob, and Arlong. It felt like Hody and Caesar didn't feel like much of a threat compared to early One Piece villains, and that is due to a number of reasons. You could feel that the gap in strength between the Straw Hats and the antagonist is narrower, and Straw Hats no longer feel like the underdogs. They are recognized by the world right now, and the idea of them defeating their opponents is much easier to believe, and that reduces the tension of the story. Whatever conflict they are partaking on, it would feel less challenging to solve if the main problem is easier to fix. Even Doflamingo, who is a major threat and did take some effort to take him down, still did not put doubt in our hearts that he would get defeated, especially with Law involved. Luffy, who felt like a helpless ant in the Marineford, narrowly avoiding getting crushed, has become one of the strongest characters in the show right now, and he poses a very good chance to defeating almost anyone. But don't get me wrong, character development is essential, and he was bound to reach that level at some point. But it's hard to take an entire arc seriously if it's very easy to imagine the result. The same couldn't be said about the Alabasta and Marineford arcs. We couldn't even begin to imagine how Luffy would be able to defeat a Logia user like Crocodile, who seemed almost invincible at the time. He nearly died 2 times, and all of his attacks were futile, and it required him to think outside of the box and figure out his weakness, and when he did, it felt very satisfying. Going forward now, Logia characters no longer feel scary, almost not scary at all, because although they were invulnerable at some point, now you can deal damage to them with a cheat code called hack, which does sound like a solution to our problem, but in reality it took this strategic element away from the story. It is never obvious how much haki each character has, and this gave Oda so much freedom in choosing when and how a character would be defeated. And that's not the only problem with haki, because it also created a huge retcon. A lot of characters pre-time skip felt like they should have been able to use it before, like Crocodile or Gekko Moria, who fought with the likes of Whitebeard and Kaido. Rob Lucci, the strongest CB9 member, not knowing haki yet? Yeah, that's why now when all of a sudden a lot of characters started using haki, it felt like we were cheated. But granted, when a show drags for too long, it cannot possibly avoid retcons. I mean, when you think about it, it's been active for literal decades, and these authors that wrote the story are humans too. They make mistakes, and there is a limit to how consistently creative they can be, which is why a lot of arcs and characters feel like similar versions of another. In fact, Oda formed a pattern to cope with that problem. The Straw Hats enter an island, they split up, they discover the people there are oppressed, Luffy gets angry, Luffy gets defeated or caught or jailed, he escapes, we find out that the villain has been setting up a plan for years, Luffy comes back to stop that plan and the villain, Zoro fights the strongest subordinate, and Sanji fights their strongest subordinate, and the rest of the Straw Hats fight their own battles. Luffy finally defeats the villain, and the Straw Hats eat a huge meal at the end. Yeah, sounds familiar, doesn't it? And that's not exclusive to arcs either, but characters too. Here are some prime examples. These two are the first major threat to post and pre-time skip Luffy, and their crimes were covered by their position as a warlord. They also mocked Luffy for being too weak. Then they end up in jail. The big brother with a fire element, the kinda good admiral, a fish that hates humans, royalties who traveled with the Straw Hats to save their kingdom and had their father's reputation ruined by the antagonist, princes fighting tyranny while living in hiding and wanting to save their kingdoms. Saving a kingdom or an island from oppressive rulers has been repeated so many times. Too many characters were forced to leave and Luffy had to bring them back. And repetition tends to be boring, but when these concepts were first used, they made full impact. If you could actually swap any of the arcs, they would actually still make a full impact. But because they came later, they didn't work very well. And this problem of repeating ideas hurts the experience of every arc. But that's not the only issue. Because the post-time skip arcs felt more like exterior conflicts to the Straw Hats compared to the previous ones, despite the fact that the problems are getting bigger and the parties involved being more important. And that's because these issues had less personal stakes and significance to the Straw Hats compared to the earlier arcs. For example, Luffy defeated Arlong because he had a personal loyalty to Nami. Later on, Oda tried to pull the Straw Hats into conflict with the Law Alliance and these characters, but they were more like strangers or not very close friends to the Straw Hats. And so, we couldn't care as much as we did before. Dressrosa had fruit on top of it, and Law was getting closer to the Straw Hats, and so it did kind of work, but still, it was too damn long. By the time of the Dressrosa arc, Luffy activated his fruit and started stretching every episode, trying to make it to 18 or 20 minutes, repeating scenes, adding episodes, flashbacks, fights that dragged too long, showing the reaction of every single character out there, adding an opening and ending scene just to kill time, as if Toei were fighting for survival, not producing a show. And this, again, feels like they are cheating us. And then you see that Oda started to extend the cast and the world to an overwhelming point, introducing a billion character, trying so hard to make them look different, those weird looks, and sound different, using every element available like a laughter or a trope or a weird fruit. But here's the thing, you don't need 1,000 episodes to tell a story. And me personally, I prefer a fast-paced 60 episodes over an extended 120. The earlier arcs in comparison were short and quick, with an average 20 to 30 episodes, and each arc did have a proper build-up and ending, pre and post time skip, but the additional episodes in between delayed the resolution and shifted our attention towards something else, therefore lowering the impact. And if the impact is lower, then it's just not as good. This problem did not exist for me in the early arcs of One Piece, and when I realized it, those were actually the good times, the good episodes. I had so much fun watching it with my older brother, and after the time skip, I don't know, it just felt different for me. It didn't feel the same anymore. I might have temporarily stopped watching the show, but I'm pretty sure I would have to go back to it because of the promise of the One Piece. Who does not want to know what the One Piece is, right? Or how Luffy would end up being the Pirate King. Aside from the antagonist problems, Kaido is actually different, and the Wano arc seems to be different altogether. And with its great animation, pretty sure it's gonna be great. Anyway, that was my opinion, guys. I hope that didn't make you mad or anything. Let me know if you agree or have a different opinion. See you.